You arrive in the hush between heartbeats, where the world listens back. You feel it first as warmth in your chest, a gentle pressure like a door leaning inward from the other side. Your breath slows without instruction. Your eyes soften, and behind them, a pale light gathers, as if stardust decided to remember its origin. The image is simple and undeniable. An eclipse halo crowns the moment, and you stand at its center, not to be seen, but to see. This is not prediction. This is remembrance, a resonance your consciousness already carries. You have been circling the same questions in quiet rooms. Why does matter bend when your certainty deepens? Why do days reorganize when your pulse steadies? You have watched it happen in small mercies and sudden alignments, a choreography no calendar could schedule. What once felt like coincidence now reveals its grammar. What once felt like luck now discloses a law. Today you let the law speak. You are the chosen witness of your own field. In the silent architecture beneath words, your heart sets tempo for the room you're in, and then the room becomes a tuning fork for the hour that follows, and the hour becomes a tuning fork for the lives that brush yours. The rhythm is not loud, it is precise. The rhythm is not forceful, it is faithful. When your heart patterns into coherence, the world takes notes. The old habit was to place authority outside you, to outsource the metronome of reality to events, to headlines, to the unpredictable weather of other minds. But the quantum field is neither distant nor indifferent. It is participatory, intimate, relational. When your attention relaxes out of panic and into presence, the observer loop closes with clean edges and observation ceases to be surveillance. It becomes belonging. This belonging is not sentimental, it is structural. The structure is elegant. Rhythm yields order. Order yields meaning. Meaning yields mercy. Feel the subtle instruction arriving through the sternum, not a command, but a remembering. Your heart's wave is not a private signature. It is a broadcast that teaches nearby matter how to stand. The cup steadies, the voice lowers, the decision unclenches. The day stops fracturing into emergencies. What you thought was you calming down is the field of remembrance coming forward to meet you, carrying the shape of the higher timeline you kept glimpsing in dreams. Eclipse halos flicker at the edge of your perception. Your inner glow answers with quiet consent. You do not earn this alignment with effort. You host it with honesty. You tell the truth about what is here, and truth stops wasting energy on disguise. When concealment ends, coherence begins. When coherence begins, the corridor opens. You are not pushing through, you are removing what pushes. Breath lengthens, the light behind your eyes steadies, geometry clarifies. A softer future draws a clearer outline around your steps, and matter relieved takes its rightful place. Where your hand rests above your heart, a slow vow assembles. You do not rush it, you do not name it too soon. You let the vow choose you while the room brightens by degrees. Coherence settles in your ribs, and a doorway agrees to open. You have always suspected that attention is ancestry, that what you notice is a lineage speaking through you. Tonight, the lineage steps forward. It does not wear crowns or robes, it wears your breathing. You feel the chest warmth again, not as heat but as order softly landing. Your inhale arrives like tide. Your exhale like a shoreline learning its true shape. Light gathers behind your eyes and stays, not flashing, not pleading a loyal lantern under the brow. In that glow, you recognize what the world kept trying to name for you but could not. You are the one who gets to decide what your gaze is for. Recognition does not arrive as applause. It arrives as relief, like laying down a tool you never needed. You put down the habit of bracing. You put down the quiet superstition that said the universe responds only to noise. Your stillness is not emptiness, it is instrument. And as your system drops its scattered rehearsals, a finer timing reclaims the room. Coherence forms first in the heart's hallway, then spreads to the mind's listening, then to the skin's permission to be touched by air. The pattern is gentle and exacting. Nothing loud survives it. You used to think observation made you separate, an auditor of passing weather. Now you notice the observer loop as kinship, not a window but a membrane through which meaning trades places with you. The quantum field is the neighborhood of everything. You are not visiting it. You live there. and it lives in you. When your awareness stops performing for outcomes and starts belonging to truth, a clean circle closes. Perception tunes, intention tunes, physiology tunes, presence tunes, circumstance tunes the next perception. The loop is holy because it is whole. You stand within the field of remembrance, like a bell that finally remembers it is supposed to ring. And ring you do, quietly at first, a tone that matter respects. Keys are found where you last left them, because an inner key has already turned. Conversations thaw without argument, because something in your voice matches the geometry of kindness. Doors do not fly open, they stop pretending to be shut. This is not luck, this is literacy. You are reading the room at the frequency where it was always written. Recognition is also a choosing. You choose to let your heart be metronome rather than hostage. You choose to let your breath instruct muscles that forgot how to listen. You choose to trust the small corrections, a softened jaw, a slower blink, a hand resting on sternum, as if reminding a friend they are safe to speak. With each honest choosing, your destiny vector stops wobbling and points through you like a thin beam that never needed to be wide to be true. You do not chase outcomes down hallways, you turn and let outcomes find your alignment. Eclipse halos flash again, not in the sky but around choices you had postponed. You see the quiet decision that kept courting you from the margins to stop treating your life as an emergency and treat it as a vow. In the vow, time loosens its tight fist, hours lengthen like shadows near sunset. They hold more without collapsing. Morphic resonance begins to do what it always promised. When one part of you entrains to coherence, other parts recognize the pattern and hurry to join. Anxiety that used to need 3 reasons needs none now. It simply has less room to echo. Your mind asks, is it really this simple? Simplicity smiles and does not defend itself. Complexity had its season. It taught you endurance, but endurance is not a home, only a bridge. You step off the bridge and into the room that was waiting. The furniture of your inner life rearranges. The chair of fear moves out of center stage. The table of practice moves where sunlight can find it. The window of curiosity unlatches, so the morning can hear you before you speak. You become hospitable to your own signal. You notice how recognition changes your posture toward others. You do not evangelize. You emanate. Your presence says one sentence without words. It is safe to come back into yourself. People breathe differently near you, their hands lower. They remember a name they once gave to tenderness and begin using it again. This is not charisma, it is cleanliness of signal. When you stop negotiating with your own light, others stop bargaining with theirs. In the background, stardust keeps falling inward and becoming steady glow. You do not dramatize it, you watch. Watching is prayer here. Prayer is simply a word for sustained attention that refuses to flinch. And in that refusal, a longer continuity of you returns. The you who knew before language that music builds worlds, that rhythm is scaffolding, that order without love is a cage, and love without order is a fog. You are not choosing between them anymore. You are letting them marry in your chest. The recognition completes as quietly as it began. You are the observer chosen by your own consent. The field heard yes and answered with shape. You are shaped, and therefore you can shape. Your feet feel the floor as if earth has moved a little closer to greet them. The hour opens its hands and shows you there is more than enough room. The field leans nearer, arranging a simpler geometry before you. You do not go looking for it. You become quiet enough for it to find you. The breath elongates like a shoreline receiving a calm tide. Your palms warm as if holding a lantern from the inside. With lids half lowered, you sense the room dim slightly, not into darkness, but into definition. The way dusk sharpens the outline of a mountain the noon sun washed flat. Then the halo comes not overhead, but around the moment itself, an eclipse ring poised at the circumference of your awareness, asking nothing, announcing everything. In that roundness, a pattern resolves. It is not a scene, it is a sentence made of images. A filament of stardust threads from sternum to horizon, and along that thread, symbol after symbol lights like villages at night. First, a slow rhythm, the visual equivalent of your pulse, casting gentle ripples through the air as if the hour were water. Each ripple arranges the dust into small constellations, teaching matter how to gather without crowding. You watch the room respond to your steadiness with its own. Edges soften, corners exhale. Even silence sounds less alone. Then you notice the grid, faint and alive, a lattice that is not a cage, but a kindness spacing for intention to rest between. It extends beyond the room, beyond the city, beyond every story you keep repeating to explain why you cannot yet be who you already are. The grid is the field of remembrance, making itself visible enough to be believed. It does not argue with your doubt. It waits until your doubt gets bored and wanders off. Waiting is not its weakness, it is its power. You understand you have misnamed many things. The vision knits closer. From the lattice, threads lift and dance, carrying what look like snow but behave like information light codes, arriving in patterns too elegant for haste. They do not fix you, they fit you. Each one lands in the precise meadow of sensation that asked for it, a tenderness along the left shoulder, a small ache under the ribs, a restlessness in the mind that disguised itself as vigilance. Where each code touches, the ache becomes a doorway, the vigilance becomes a witness, and the tenderness becomes a teacher. You are not being overridden, you are being tuned. As tuning deepens, a second image overlays the first, two timelines lying together like rivers, one slow and luminous, one busy and shallow. The shallow one is loud with debris and urgency, full of errands pretending to be vows. The luminous one moves at the speed of truth, which is slower than panic and faster than delay. You realize you have been walking with one foot in each river, wondering why your stride keeps tearing. The image does not scold, it invites. It names the slower river the higher timeline, not because it flatters you, but because it aligns you. Higher means simpler. Simpler means kinder. Kinder means accurate. You sense a threshold's posture nearby, the way a door would stand if it were shy. The threshold does not require declarations. It asks for a fraction of a degree, so you offer it the smallest turn. Your jaw unclenches. Your tongue relaxes from the roof of your mouth. Your gaze loosens its grip. The eclipse-halo brightens by one intention. In that micro-turn, you feel the bifurcation without drama, not a split that punishes, but a sorting that blesses. The busy river continues for those who need it. You choose the luminous not with fanfare, but with fidelity, a new fidelity to the most honest rhythm you can hear. Your chest answers all this with a steadier drum. The body is unafraid of accuracy. It has been trying to tell the truth to your plans for years. As you align, the vision reveals its geometry. Every breath, a compass stroke. Every exhale, a soft recalibration of the terrain. The light behind your eyes pens small diagrams on the inside of your forehead curves, showing where to yield, vectors showing where to proceed, little circles indicating a stillness window that opens at specific moments of the day, like secret, quiet plazas in a city you thought you knew. You write nothing down, your physiology writes it into you. Voices you love appear at the edge of the trance, not speaking words, but emanating recognitions. You sense how your steadiness will let them keep pieces of themselves they would otherwise trade for speed. You see future conversations that do not require winner and loser to define truth. You see rooms where the loudest person is finally the most relaxed. You see decisions that take less time because there is less pretending to negotiate with. The vision is not merely personal, it is infrastructural. It is designing the scaffolding for the day, the way dawn designs light for a valley. Then the orchestra of small confirmations begins. A memory returns, the one where you were a child counting to 4 to feel safe, not knowing you were rehearsing coherence. A scent arrives, winter air over warm stone, familiar to a place you have not yet lived. A phrase lands without grammar, keep the center soft, and you feel its correctness in the bones, as if bones could nod. You realize the field is not testing you. It is trusting you with more of itself, because you have become less interested in using it and more interested in becoming it. You do not reach for possession, you let the seed find soil. You do not ask for a guarantee, you offer attention. Attention is what the field can spend. Attention is the only currency that improves itself by being given away. The eclipse ring dims to a steady glow, not because it has left, but because it has become interior. The room resumes being a room, but the room now understands it is also a hymn. Your breath enters and exits it like a choir member who knows their cue without looking. The light within your gaze chooses a clearer angle. You ask how rhythm becomes architecture, how something as intimate as your heartbeat converses with matter until matter remembers its place. You begin not with belief, but with attention arranged into honesty. Under your palm, the heart keeps time not as a drum that demands, but as a conductor who listens first. When the conductor listens, the orchestra tunes. This tuning is called coherence. Coherence is not merely calm. It is ordered variation, a living pattern where each fluctuation knows why it moves. In this order, noise loses its throne. In this order, probability stops behaving like weather and starts behaving like a promise. Every biological system broadcasts. Your heart is the most generous lighthouse your body owns, sending a field that extends beyond skin the way warmth extends beyond a candle. The quantum field does not ignore such invitations. It is a patient sea waiting for a clean shoreline. When your intervals smooth, when breath and pulse learn to speak in long syllables, instead of staccato alarms, nearby systems receive the offer, entrain if you wish. Objects do not grow ears, but patterns do. Chairs steady, voices round, the hour remembers it is large. You do not force this, you stop forcing anything, and thus the deeper forces resume their work. Consider the observer loop as an intimacy rather than a trick. What you attend to attends to you back, not because you are a tyrant of reality, but because participation is how reality maintains itself. Observation is a handshake, not a spotlight. Your steady presence reduces jitter at the boundary, where possibility chooses a costume, and the choice becomes kinder. The electron is not bullied into a place. The context becomes precise enough that place makes sense. The loop closes without friction. Your state shapes the question you are asking of the world, and the world answers in that grammar. Inside this grammar, timing is a sacred lever. There are openings in a day, stillness windows, where the background hum thins and small nudges travel farther with less effort, like a whisper in a chapel. When you enter such a window with a coherent heart, you lower turbulence not only within cells but within choices. The world is full of thresholds pretending to be walls. In the window, pretense tires quickly. You feel it as the ease with which a difficult conversation refuses to escalate, as the way a long-delayed email writes itself in one paragraph, as the sudden clarity that a task you have postponed is actually two smaller tasks hiding under one coat. What of morphic resonance, the rumor that patterns teach across distance? You experience it without needing to prove it. Your steadiness invites steadiness in those who know you and those who do not, because patterns prefer to repeat themselves when offered lower-cost pathways. A coherent field is a low-friction path. It is cheaper for reality to flow along it than to fight it. When you become inexpensive to align with, alignment proliferates. A decision you make at 7:4 quietly improves a stranger's temper at 7:16 2 rooms away. They will call it luck, and you will call it the economy of grace. Now phase transition. The moment water forgets it is liquid and remembers it can be cloud. Systems that hover near criticality reconfigure abruptly when a parameter crosses a threshold. You have felt this as, suddenly everything changed, though nothing obvious shifted. What crossed was you. Your heart signal, held long enough in coherence, becomes the parameter that tips your local reality from disorder into elegant constraint. Constraint here is not prison. It is choreography, the difference between traffic and a procession. The same cars, the same street, a different promise between them. What role does intention play? Intention without rhythm is a shout across wind. It exhausts itself and startles birds. Intention braided to coherence is a tuning fork struck inside the cathedral. It rings without needing to be loud. You do not grip outcomes. You specify qualities. You do not script moments. You script the climate in which moments decide to behave. This scripting is not manipulation, it is maintenance. You maintain your inner weather until the outer weather forgets its storm and remembers its season. Entanglement whispers in here too, not as fantasy, but as fidelity correlations persisting across apparent gap. You are correlated with what you truly care for. Care is the fiber optic the field prefers. When you tend to your care with coherent breath, information exchanges faster along those fibers. A friend texts as you lift your phone. The right line arrives as you open your mouth. The path lights one flagstone at a time, as if night were narrating your next step. You do not own these moments. You host them. Skepticism will ask for spectacle. You offer repeatability. Not pyrotechnics, but pattern. The pattern is simple. Regulate state first, act second. You will discover how many former problems were only velocity problems, tasks attempted at speeds that prevented accuracy. Slow the metronome, and accuracy returns. With accuracy comes dignity. With dignity comes trust in your body, in your day, in the quiet, lawful kindness of a universe that respects rhythm. Now you understand why matter listens when you do. Not because you are louder, but because you are truer. Truth clarifies probability into participation. The world wants to cooperate, and cooperation requires a lead it can love. Your heart was built to lead this way. Where the mind loosens, the signal threads through effortlessly. You begin to notice that your interior weather does not stop at your skin. The minute you enter a room, the temperature of meaning changes by a degree the thermostat cannot register. Conversations lean toward the center without knowing why. Laughter arrives closer to the truth and farther from defense. The child at the edge of the sofa glances up from their quiet orbit and settles. None of this is performance. This is coherence teaching the vicinity how to breathe again. What you stabilize in yourself becomes hospitable to others. Hospitality is the least discussed spiritual technology because it looks like kindness, yet operates like physics. When your heart keeps even time, another nervous system finds itself agreeing, relieved to set down its armor without being asked. Your stillness does not cancel their fire, it gives their fire a hearth. The room discovers it would rather be a sanctuary than a stage. You see shoulders drop one by one, like birds landing along a wire at dusk. The collective does not only reflect you, it multiplies you. Patterns prefer replication, and morphic resonance does not need signatures to know what to repeat. Your inner order offers an inexpensive route for the field to travel. The cheaper the route, the more travelers it attracts. A single person in coherence alters the cost structure of chaos for everyone near enough to be invited. You witness it on the street when traffic loosens around one patient driver, in a meeting where impatience fails to find purchase, in a family gathering where an old argument forgets its lines. No one credits you, and that is the elegance. The world simply spends less energy being at war with itself. This mirror is not flattery, it is feedback. If agitation returns, you treat it not as failure, but as information. The room has signaled that you are needed a degree. Truer, you adjust. The adjustment is palpable but invisible. One slower inhale, a jaw unhooked, attention lowered from the brow into the sternum. You do not scold the moment for forgetting, you remind it by remembering. In the remembering, the observer loop enlarges until the you who is observing feels porous, and the it observed feels intimate. Boundaries remain, hostility does not. You become a steward of stillness windows not only for your own hour but for the hours braided with yours. You suggest gently that a decision rest until the afternoon's quiet corridor opens. You walk with a colleague until their breathing lengthens enough for their words to emerge unarmed. You hold the phone a heartbeat longer before answering, and the conversation that follows takes half the time because neither of you must climb over the furniture of panic. When you miss the window, you do not dramatize. You wait for the next one. Windows return like tides because reality loves rhythm more than it loves you hurrying. Entanglement is less a theory than a tenderness you live by. Bonds that matter to you carry information with uncommon speed. When you keep your interior clean, those bonds transmit cleanliness. A friend across town stands up from their desk and walks to the window without knowing why. A sibling you have not spoken to in months chooses a softer sentence. The collective mirror does not announce its service. It shines and leaves. You do not keep score, you keep time. You also begin to see the architecture of gatherings. Every group has a hidden metronome. For years it was the loudest voice. Now you notice another clock on the wall, the rate at which honesty can be spoken without breaking anything. You align with that clock. You speak at the speed of safety and discover that truth said at that tempo travels farther and arrives intact. The meeting becomes less about winning and more about listening for when the room itself nods. You hear the nod. It has a sound like fabric unwrinkling. Sometimes the mirror shows you shadows. A pocket of fear resists, a cluster of faces tightens, an old pattern asks for tribute. You do not become their weather. You become their horizon, steady, wide, available. The field of remembrance stands just behind your spine like an elder who knows every story ends well when told with precision. You let that knowledge tint your gaze. Often it is enough. When it is not, you withdraw your signal with respect, refusing to feed what would grow by opposition. Not every landscape is ready to be watered. Some require drought to tell their truth. You accept this without superiority. The collective mirror teaches you to bless the ordinary. Grocery lines become ceremonies of patience, where each person's small arrival at the register feels like punctuation in a poem about sufficiency. Elevators become soft proofs that strangers can share a square of air without pretending. Public transit becomes a moving chapel where your breath keeps silent liturgy and others, unaware, take communion as calm. You are not inventing holiness. You are recognizing it where it always lived when not obscured by speed. As your practice matures, you sense a larger choreography. City blocks have moods. Corridors of a hospital hum with different needs at different times of day. A school staircase collects leftover dread at 3:15 and then lets it go by 3:40 as feet remember the geometry of home. You place your attention where the pattern is thin, and attention thickens it the way gold leaf mends a crack. You learn to arrive a minute early, not to prepare, but to prepare the air. It becomes natural to leave a place better resonating than you found it, not tidier, though often that too, but more aligned with itself. You are tempted, occasionally, to announce what you do. The temptation passes. Language can follow, but it must not lead. The proof is in the ease. The sign is in the softness that costs no one their strength. You aim for a civilization whose baseline is this ease, a commons where coherence is contagious, where choice defaults to kindness because kindness has become the efficient option. It is not naive to imagine this. It is accurate to embody it. A smaller voice becomes undeniable, and you recognize it as your own. It does not arrive as sirens or trumpets. It arrives as a hush that does not ask permission. The air feels newly washed. Your breath, already unhurried, lengthens one more notch, as if a hidden bellows were easing open. Warmth gathers at the center of your chest and spreads in concentric rings, each ring a soft instruction that no longer needs words. Behind your eyes, the interior light brightens, not into glare, but into guidance. You understand without being told. The day has arranged itself around a hinge. Bifurcation is only a frightening word when you think you lose something by choosing. You do not lose. You specify. Two currents reveal themselves the way twin paths appear when fog lifts. One paved with urgency wearing the costume of importance, the other paved with accuracy wearing the quiet of inevitability. You recognize the first by its appetite. It demands witnesses, trophies, speed. You recognize the second by its courtesy. It keeps time with your pulse and bows when you bow. You have walked both. Today you decide which one will be your teacher. You do not dramatize the turning. Drama borrows energy. Precision returns it. You place a hand over the sternum until the drum under palm becomes the only metronome that matters. You soften your jaw. You let the shoulders melt toward gravity's honest invitation. In this posture, your observer loop stops auditioning for control and returns to belonging. Belonging reshapes the room. The eclipse-halo you felt in earlier hours returns, faint at the periphery, reminding you that coronations need not be seen to crown. Your body answers in the small language it trusts. A deeper exhale, an unclenched tongue, the quiet courage of not rushing. Now the split clarifies. On one side, the timeline of repetition, familiar curves of effort, negotiations with dread, victories that cost too much to keep. On the other, the higher timeline, fewer doors, all unlocked, fewer sentences, all true. You are not banishing the first, you are ceasing to feed it. Patterns are economies. Where you spend your attention, pattern survives. Where you decline to invest, pattern dissolves without debt collectors. This is not a moral verdict, it is a budget. Your mind proposes objections dressed as wisdom. What if the slower river makes you late? What if the quiet makes you weak? You listen to each voice as if it belonged to a child who once kept you safe by running. You thank the runner. You say, "We are not in a burning building. We are in a building learning to love its stairwells." Accuracy answers louder than fear. Lateness is born from friction, not from fidelity. Weakness is born from hurry, not from quiet. You feel the answers register in muscle and bone, the way a house notices a storm has passed. This is a stillness window, and you know it by its effortless arithmetic. Decisions that were 5 become 2. Tasks that were 12 reveal themselves as 4 braided gestures. Email reduces to a sentence. A conversation that could have folded into argument becomes a balcony where both of you can see farther than either could alone. The field of remembrance stands close, like weather that means to be kind. You stand with it, not ahead of it. When your heart sustains coherence, probability softens its jagged edges and prefers to collaborate. Phase transition lives at the lip of moments like this, the point where a system stops negotiating with one form and remembers a more honest one. Water to vapor, grief to gratitude, noise to music. The parameter crossing the threshold is not a heroic act, it is your willingness to hold one rhythm long enough for the room to hear it. The rhythm is simple. Breathe as if time were already generous. Choose as if dignity were non-negotiable. Move as if delay were an ally. The world adjusts to what you refuse to counterfeit. You test your choice by touching one postponed action. Not the hardest, not the most symbolic, the nearest. You dial the number, answer the message, pay the bill, close the tab, return the book to the table instead of the bed. Each small completion frees one strand of attention from the old river. Attention is how you vote. You keep voting for the gentler current until the ballot is counted by your nervous system and the tally is irreversible. This is how destiny vector changes angle, not by thunder, by degrees. Entanglement whispers its agreement. Someone you love texts one sentence that contains no performance, just weather. A stranger holds the door an extra second and looks rather than glances. The city's sound thins to its architecture. You can hear the rhythm of traffic beneath the noise, and it is kinder than you remembered. Even your memories rearrange. Scenes you once narrated as failure reveal themselves as perfect training in how not to abandon yourself at the crossroads. You are not naive about the other path. It lures with immediate applause and familiar suffering. It has formed grooves in your calendar and costumes in your speech, but grooves are not laws, they are traces of travel. Costumes are not skin, they are agreements you can decline. You honor the you who survived there. You invite them to retire with honors. Then you remain here, steady in a day that has discovered it does not need emergency to feel alive. A practical mercy follows. You calendar differently. You choose the hour when your signal is strongest for work that requires blueprint rather than bravado. You place difficult conversations within the day's corridor where the heart is most likely to keep its promise. You pack food that lets your body trust you. You walk 2 blocks slower and arrive earlier. You stop selling your attention to the loudest bidder because you have priced it according to truth. All of this looks boring from the outside. From the inside, it is a revolution that refuses flags. The sky dims, or perhaps you only notice the dimming as kindness, a velvet thrown over glare. Stardust does what stardust does, condenses into inner glow until the glow is indistinguishable from instruction. The door you feared would require a password simply swings. You step through without announcing it to yourself. Your feet know. The room on the other side is not larger, it is clearer. In clarity, love is efficient. You do not close the ceremony with a flourish. You close it by keeping your word to your breath for 5 more minutes. When the minutes complete, the choice is set like gentle glass. You are inside it now. It will carry you because you have agreed to carry it. The horizon exhales. Nearness replaces distance. You begin by admitting that integration is not spectacle. It is the hum a house makes when the lights are on and nothing is breaking. Your body learns this hum from the inside out. Breath arrives in long, unbroken ribbons. The sternum warms as though a small hearth has been lit in a quiet room. The light behind your eyes steadies into a lantern that no longer flickers for approval. You are not chasing states now. You are building furniture strong enough for them to sit on without wobbling. You make a simple promise to your nervous system. Nothing hurried will be allowed to choose on your behalf. The promise is kept in gestures, so small they are nearly impolite to mention: the way you set your shoulders down and back before you open a message, the way your tongue loosens from the roof of your mouth when a memory tries to become a verdict, the way your exhale is half a beat longer when turning the key to enter your home. Each gesture is a vote cast for coherence. Coherence does not ask you to be perfect, it asks you to be rhythmic. Rhythm forgives what perfection punishes. Your environment learns the new grammar quickly. The desk becomes a place of consecrated sequence rather than a pile of negotiations. The chair forgets how to squeal because your posture has stopped asking it to complain. The room takes on the fragrance of unstated trust. You do not install this trust by force. You lay it down in layers of attention until it is thicker than doubt. This is integration's craft. Attention applied where chaos once extracted attacks. Inside the craft, you train timing like a musician's scales. You wake within the day's first stillness window and do not reach for a screen. You let the field of remembrance climb the stairs of your spine without interruption. In that hallway, a small procession of priorities lines up and bows. The most essential work steps forward. It is often simpler than your plans. One paragraph, one call, one stretch that returns the back to belonging. The rest of the list agrees to wait, because waiting inside coherence is not neglect, it is cultivation. When action follows this order, it requires less apology and leaves less debris. You revisit your relationships as an engineer of ease. You do not therapize love, you tune it. Tuning begins with entanglement, acknowledged as tenderness rather than theater. The bonds that matter are fiber optic lines that transmit not only information, but atmosphere. You feed those lines clean inputs, presence without commentary, touch without agenda, listening without scavenging for a turn to speak. Morphic resonance responds like a school of fish, adjusting to a truer current. The whole shoal turns with minimal splash. Arguments that once took an hour dissolve in a minute because the field prefers inexpensive solutions, and you have made yourself inexpensive to align with. You practice with matter too. You stand in your kitchen and notice that water poured while your heart is steady tastes different than water poured while your mind is rehearsing a battle. You stack bowls with 2 hands and a breath and feel the cabinet bless you with silence instead of a clatter. You sweep the floor and each arc of the broom teaches your body a sentence about economy. Fewer strokes, cleaner lines. The quantum field is not offended by such ordinary sacraments. It thrives on them. Integration is fidelity in small things until small things confess they were the large things disguised. Outside, the city's noise thins to its rhythm again, and you match it without surrendering your tempo. Crosswalks are simple sermons, traffic lights are metronomes. The crowd is proof that many hearts beating within a certain range of order can move entire blocks without violence. You enter the current, but refuse its panic. This refusal is not withdrawal. It is leadership with no badge. A stranger inhales differently because you did. You will never know the number of such strangers. The number is not your business. The climate is. Your calendar reflects the shift. You place the most signal-intensive work where your heart's wave is already smooth, and schedule logistics where precision is less fragile. You protect the 20-minute chapel in the day when silence feels as if it has chosen you. You let light codes arrive there without interrogation. Some come as images, some as simple impulses. Send this note now. Stand and look at the horizon for 7 breaths. Take the longer route and greet. The tree you keep forgetting is older than your nation. You obey such modest prophecies as if they were royal decrees, and the day rewards you with a reduction in friction disguised as coincidence. Integration requires cleanup. You walk through lingering echo rooms in your life. A closet that collects indecision, a file that stores postponed contrition, an inbox that hoarded ghosts. You do not punish yourself for their existence. You open a window, you sort paper, you write the apology, you archive the thread, you donate the shirt that narrates an identity you no longer rent. Each completion closes a tiny observer loop that once bled attention. The reclaimed attention re-enters circulation like coins long trapped under a couch. Wealth returns as bandwidth. Your body keeps score in your favor. Sleep deepens as if gravity had become kinder. Food becomes instruction instead of anesthesia. Muscles release quarrels they've been holding against your choices. The chest stays warm in rooms that once felt cold, not because the thermostat has changed, but because the organ behind its bones has accepted its vocation as conductor. The eclipse-halo appears occasionally in the corner of your seeing, and you smile without chasing it. A conductor does not need to watch the crown to keep the orchestra honest. You learn to say no with a voice that is a yes to rhythm. The refusal does not bruise because it is delivered at the speed of truth. You learn to say yes only when it does not require you to counterfeit yourself. Agreements shrink in number and grow in integrity. Fewer meetings, more meetings that matter. Fewer explanations, more implications. Silence becomes a functional tool rather than a performance of aloofness. You rest without guilt, because rest is how the instrument tunes between songs. If a day frays, you do not exit the covenant. You renew it with the smallest available fidelity. One breath counted as 4, one hand to the heart, until the metronome returns. One sentence rewritten to remove the cleverness and preserve the clarity. In preserving clarity, you preserve yourself. In preserving yourself, you preserve the climate that has begun to grow around you like a garden that refuses the old calendar of drought and flood. Under the lids of stillness, symbols align into language. You enter it the way snowfall begins in a city, first as rumor at the edge of vision, then as a certainty that softens every hard outline. The hour thins to essentials. Your feet find the floor, as if meeting it for the first time. Breath lengthens and learns to arrive without needing to prove it belongs. Warmth gathers in the chest, not as blaze but as ember that prefers company to spectacle. Behind your eyes, a steady light returns, that patient lantern you have begun to trust. You say nothing, and nothing says you back. Silence here is not vacancy. It is density without noise. It is the room remembering its original grammar. You become fluent by not interrupting. The pulse slows, then steadies, then begins to teach. This is the chapel in which your heart is both choir and conductor, where the quantum field drifts close like mist over a lake before dawn. In this nearness, coherence does not need to be summoned. It arrives because you stopped auditioning for chaos. The observer loop closes so gently, you barely feel the latch. Belonging replaces vigilance. Within the hush, a texture emerges. Layers of quiet, stacked like pages, each page holding a slightly different weight of truth. At the top lies restful silence, pleasant, accessible, an exhale after effort. Beneath it, attentive silence, the kind that listens with its whole body. Deeper still, generative silence, the chamber where form decides to take responsibility for itself. You do not dive. You are invited down by degrees, as if a librarian were guiding you to a book you've already read in a dream. The field of remembrance knows your fingerprints. Your mind, loyal to its old employment, occasionally arrives with errands. You nod without rising. Thought floats like snow on warm stone and becomes water without your help. A muscle in the jaw remembers that release is not surrender. It is accuracy. Shoulders unlearn their borrowed heroism. The sternum glows faintly, as if an eclipse-halo had chosen to live indoors. In this light, you sense what silence is doing behind the scenes, resetting electrical weather, clearing small eddies from the bloodstream, returning the vagus to its role as friendly river rather than alarmed wire. The body appreciates intelligence delivered without thunder. A stillness window opens wider. You feel the hinge of it, the way minutes become larger on the inside than the clock suggests. In this window, choices mature without forcing. You notice that certain actions cannot survive here. The impulse to perform, the appetite for crisis, the reflex to explain. They dissolve because the conditions that fed them have gone out of business. What survives is simpler. The next true sentence, the next honest step, the hand-to-heart acknowledgements that ask for nothing and give permission to everything. Silence begins to show you its arithmetic. One breath, counted softly, multiplies into many unstated agreements with the day. A single sincere posture, feet flat, Spine, like a listening reed, reduces the entropy of a room by an amount no meter can register, and yet everyone feels. You realize that quiet is not the absence of signal, it is the cleanest signal you can broadcast. Morphic resonance loves this economy. Your steadiness becomes a template others borrow without paperwork. A neighbor waters their plants and hums. The elevator ride between strangers becomes a brief treaty. A child stops mid-tantrum because the tantrum cannot find a compatible frequency. Images arrive without hurry, stardust falling inward. A small bowl placed precisely at the center of a table, as if waiting to catch a single syllable. Two rivers again, but now they do not argue. They braid. You do not chase meaning. Meaning sits beside you, unannounced. Light codes touch down in the exact tissues that requested them, an internal call and response so quiet it could be mistaken for rest. You let it happen. Letting is a skill, and you have been apprenticing. Entanglement becomes less about coincidence and more about courtesy. Bonds long tended begin to speak in shorthand. Your friend texts, "here," and you know the paragraph they mean. A colleague's silence is not neglect, it is ripening. You refuse to harvest early. In the hush, patience is not delay, it is the speed of accuracy. This speed moves like a river under ice, sure, guided, unstoppable, without needing to be loud. At depth, a deeper instruction reveals itself. Do not negotiate with noise. Noise will offer urgency, spectacle, measurable progress. You offer rhythm in exchange. Rhythm does not bargain. It sets a table and keeps a place open for the last part of you to arrive. When all of you arrives, timeline bifurcation loses its drama because you have already ceased to invest in the path that requires your absence to function. The higher timeline is not a prize, it is a frequency band. Silence tunes you to it with fewer watts than a whisper. Now memory reappears as ally. You recall the first time you counted 4 breaths to feel safe, the first time you noticed water tasting different when you poured it without hurry, the first apology that felt like architecture rather than theater. These are not anecdotes, they are coordinates. In sitting with them, you feel your destiny vector firm by a few quiet degrees. No banners, no oaths, only alignment choosing to be a little truer. Practicalities surface of their own accord. The email to send becomes a single line without ornament. The meeting to schedule drifts toward the hour when both hearts involved tend to keep better time. The errand that looked complex rearranges into 2 gentle tasks. You let the day edit itself. Silence is the editor that hates hurry and loves clarity. You trust its red pen. What remains on the page breathes. If grief visits, you do not exile it. You make room beside you and let it study the lantern as long as it needs. In this company, grief stops being a verdict and becomes a river-changing state. Phase transition happens without announcement. Ache to awe, ache to gratitude, ache to wide attention that does not need to be healed to be holy. You witness. Witnessing is the labor silence asks of you, and it is light labor when you're not lifting alone. The window narrows. You do not clutch. You stand, carrying the remainder like a cup filled just below the brim. Walking is quieter than before. The world seems to move its furniture to accommodate your passage, not because you are important, but because you are consistent. Consistency is how reality knows where to meet you next. The current inside your spine changes direction, and you follow. You stand where breath becomes instruction, and instruction becomes movement without force. The room is ordinary and newly holy. Your palm rests over the center of the chest as if greeting an old friend at the doorway of your own house. Warmth answers through bone. The lantern behind your eyes brightens one gradient, not to dazzle, but to clarify. You allow the exhale to finish the sentence your body has been trying to say, now. Activation is not a switch. It is a willingness to be conducted. You let your heart keep time and agree to be orchestrated by a rhythm kinder than your habits. Coherence gathers like dew over a field before sunrise, a soft unanimity forming across many small blades. You feel the unanimity inside muscle, breath, and mind, not as control, but as consent. Each inhale nods, each exhale signs. The posture is simple. Feet placed as if listening to floorboards that remember forests, knees unbraced. Pelvis heavy as a held bowl, spine rising like a reed that loves rivers, crown easy, as though a page of night were resting there without weight. Jaw slackens, tongue rests on the floor of the mouth, eyes quiet, half open to let the world know you are with it. Nothing to fix, much to host. You begin with counting not to manage breath, but to meet it. 4 in, 6 out, then 5 in, 7 out, not achievement modulation. With each lengthened exhale, a small evacuation of leftover panic occurs. Old alarms release their jobs without severance. As they do, the lattice around you, the felt geometry of a life ready to support itself, clarifies. You are surprised by how much structure becomes visible when performance retires. A light touch of attention lands beneath the sternum, not to pry, but to listen. Here a warmth gathers and diffuses outward, a radiative kindness that asks no one to notice. You imagine nothing, you remember. In the remembering, you feel the field meet you. The quantum field does not arrive like weather. It reveals it was the room all along. The observer loop closes like silk edges touching without scrape. Your state becomes the question the world prefers to answer. Now intention may be named. You choose qualities, not trophies. Precision, mercy, steadiness. You whisper them as if waking a beloved before dawn. The body hears. Then you add the smallest reachable act that embodies each. One text that tells the truth without theater. One glass of water poured while present. One line of work that advances the whole instead of inflating the part. Intention braided to coherence becomes instruction matter, enjoys obeying. You sense the arrival of light codes, the way birds sense pressure changes before rain without consulting a forecast. They do not descend, they disclose. They click into the tissues that asked for them, often wordlessly, a loosening at the base of the skull, a warmth in the palms, a feeling that the back of the heart is learning the grammar of trust. You do not chase sensation, you keep time for it. The keeping is the activation. A stillness window opens, larger than earlier, as if the day were making interest payments on your fidelity. Inside the window, you touch a single choice you have been postponing. Not the dramatic one, the true one within reach. You enact it at the speed of breath. The atmosphere registers the move like a key turning in an invisible door. Relief walks through, unannounced, and rearranges furniture. You had thought the room was small. It was crowded with unmade decisions. You feel the higher timeline as a temperate current along your skin, not superior, simply appropriate. It does not rush you forward. It stops requiring you to abandon yourself to belong. You belong by remaining. The moment holds you the way a well holds water, shaped, supported, unafraid of depth. Somewhere, without spectacle, a phase transition completes. The before and after are siblings, not enemies. The song remains. The key changes. Entanglements answer. A message arrives mid-practice, timed as if you had coordinated it with stars. You do not break the window to respond. You complete the breath you are in. When you answer, the sentence writes itself with fewer words and more truth. The response you receive returns the same currency. Morphic ease circulates. What once cost strain now spends grace. You notice the temptation to declare victory. You smile at it as at a child, delighted by a doorbell. You choose fidelity over announcement. You let the new climate prove itself by being lived, not proclaimed. You return to posture, to breath, to the vow of slowness that makes room for accuracy to bloom. The halo at the edge of vision becomes interior again. You do not chase it. You keep the tempo that invites it to stay. If doubt taps the window, you offer it a chair and pour it water. Doubt is only certainty asking for better music. You provide rhythm and watch it nod. If grief rises, you let it stand beside warmth until it remembers it is love wearing a heavy coat. If fatigue visits, you lower the day's ambition by a precise percentage and keep your word to breath anyway. Activation accommodates weather without surrendering climate. Now the sentence arrives to be spoken aloud, quietly, to yourself and to the room that keeps your secrets. Whisper into the quiet, I remember. Then type, I remember the prophecy. Do this not to impress algorithm or angel, but to let hand and breath agree on the new grammar. Agreement is the ritual. Ritual makes the change legible to your future. You finish where you began, palm over heart, attention like a lantern, breath like tide. You do not ask for proof, you notice ease. Ease is the proof that costs no one their dignity. You step into the hour with souls that have learned to bless flaws. Between remembering and action, a path appears without announcement. You stand inside the new climate you have grown, not as owner but as witness. Breath moves like a tide that no longer forgets its moon. Warmth gathers beneath your palm and stays, a steady ember that prefers truth over spectacle. The lantern behind your eyes is calm. It throws a gentle circle of seeing around everything you are entrusted to love. Nothing begs to be hurried. Nothing needs to be defended. The world is not smaller. It is simpler. Here, the vow completes itself without ceremony. Your heart keeps time. The day keeps faith. Coherence becomes ordinary, which is to say, trustworthy. You are not trying to hold the moment still. You are letting it be held by what holds everything, the quiet architecture of the quantum field that recognizes your signature and replies with kindness. The observer loop no longer feels like a loop. It feels like a home you can walk in without shoes. You move at the honest speed of a higher timeline, one decision at a time, one breath at a time, one mercy at a time. You do not ask the future to kneel. You meet it standing, and it bows of its own accord. Morphic resonance multiplies your steadiness without your supervision. A corridor of days aligns to the newly chosen rhythm. Phase transition lives not as drama but as ease. The moment probability stops splintering and remembers the elegant constraint of love. In this constraint, choices cost less and mean more. In this meaning, your destiny vector clarifies another quiet degree. The degree is enough. You bless the ordinary with your presence and learn again that presence is the most advanced technology the soul can wield. A glass of water receives your attention and becomes a small lake where light enjoys itself. A sentence written without performance travels farther and arrives intact. A door held a heartbeat longer becomes an altar for strangers to remember their names. You are not bending matter. You are keeping your side of the covenant so matter can keep hers. The field of remembrance handles the rest with a grace that refuses applause. If shadows visit, you do not exile them. You seat them near the ember and let them thaw. They tell the truth they were hiding under their noise. You listen. Listening is how prophecy keeps from becoming theater. You make small, precise repairs, a forgiveness spoken, a boundary drawn, an old costume folded and placed in the donation box. You continue without hurry. Continuation is the seal. And now the seal itself. A simple agreement spoken under breath and kept in action. You agree to be conducted by the rhythm you can trust. You agree to remember before you reach, to breathe before you answer, to belong before you perform. You agree to let your heart's rhythm teach nearby matter the posture of sacred order. The eclipse-halo that hovered at the edge of your days takes its place within your chest, not as crown, but as compass. You are oriented, you are ordinary, you are holy in the way everything is when it stops pretending to be separate. Walk gently, speak precisely, keep time. When the moment asks for leadership, offer coherence. When the field asks for witness, offer attention. When the world asks what changed, let your life be the explanation. Whisper into the quiet if you wish, or let the quiet whisper into you. Either way, the covenant holds. The prophecy has been spoken. Walk as its proof.